South Africa's business confidence improved slightly in December, but it's still below levels seen in December 2011. Let's unpack the figures now. We've got Naren Rao, CEO at Saki, joining us at the desk. Naren, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you in the new year. Just looking at that 93 figure coming through for December, just putting that into context, it is, as I said, an improvement from November where we saw 91.7, but that fourth quarter overall came in at an average of 92.2. That's the lowest level this year when it comes to business confidence. And just looking at 2012 as a whole, all these numbers to look at, the average sitting at 94.1, and that also lower than the 100, just above 100 seen in 2011. So overall, take us through the numbers and what really shaped a business mindset in 2012.
Well, overall, business was fairly pessimistic about 2012 and what they experienced. And unfortunately, the Chamber had cautioned at the tail end of 2012 that going into 2013, there wasn't much room for optimism either. And that is what this number is telling us at a high level. If you look at the quarter-on-quarter performance, the last quarter was the weakest performer. The majority of the year in BCI terms was spent on the decline and trying to recover lost ground due to those declines. And of course, the BCI represents overall economic activity. It's an indication of overall economic activity. And that gives you a gauge as to why we are failing on the job creation challenge. The reason why business is not more upbeat comes down to two things. The economic outlook, which was very poor and proven itself time and again as being poor. And of course, the policy environment, where business experienced substantial uncertainty. And the policy uncertainty was compounded by developments in the labor environment, which sadly we're carrying into 2013. In the first few days of 2013, we've already had announcements of potential strikes already underway. And it seems as though we're going to experience the so-called strike season earlier in 2013 than we ordinarily do.
An interesting angle to look at this labour strife at is the fact that it not only paints South Africa as a risky investment destination, but it also raises risks about trading with South Africa, because South Africa could be seen as an unreliable supplier. Do you feel that this is something that international businesses are concerned about?
Definitely so. The competitive environment for businesses is increasing over time. The drive to get to markets on time without any delays is more compelling. It determines whether a business survives in the coming months, not just meets with success anymore. Now we're looking at survival, not just domestically, but internationally. And when our trade partners, current and potential, assess weaknesses in our supply chain, the labor environment comes up as a key weakness and as a key risk to the continuity of supply within that supply chain. So that is an issue we're carrying forward, and that is an issue which unfortunately has featured too highly in the opening days of 2013.
Let's just talk about Saki as a member organization right now, and of course so you would have touch points with X amounts of businesses. Have you seen businesses closing down in 2012 going into 2013? Do you start the year off with less members as a result of businesses closing down?
Definitely so. We haven't completed our assessment of our total membership, but anecdotal evidence is very strong that we've lost members, and that has been the trend over the last few years. While the chamber movement as a whole has been growing, there have been particular areas where the losses have been particularly dire. Our small towns have suffered substantially, and small enterprises make up the bulk of our membership, and that is where we see numerically the largest number of losses. So the losses, unfortunately, within the total movement have offset the gains that we've experienced in any growth periods in the last few years.
So going into 2013, what are you going to be pushing for when it comes to government action, government policy? What do your members want to see? What is of most concern to them?
Well, if one goes back to the period that was covered by the BCI, the December period, where the Mangaung conference was the strong point of concentration, one of the things we were pleased with coming out of the conference was the strong emphasis on corruption and the need to combat corruption. And the ANC, I think, has done a great job of making this a focal point within the party, and we hope that this translates into being a focal point within broader government. Government has been paying close attention to this. They have put a number of structures in place to deal with corruption, but the successes haven't been that great to date. So we hope to see a change in that, and that is something that we're very pleased with coming out of the conference. Where we were less pleased and maybe even slightly disappointed is the key call of the chamber going into the conference was that out of the conference comes a very strong response to the concerns that international stakeholders have and that the rating agencies in particular are reflecting in the global environment. And that, I'm afraid, did not come out. I think there was a stronger sensitivity than there has been in the past to the views of international spectators and ratings agencies, but that comprehensive response which we were driving for failed to realize. And we hope that while it hasn't come into fruition at the ANC conference, it does come to fruition in terms of government's approach in 2013 to dealing with international stakeholders, that we see this comprehensive response, a strong policy response, a call to action, if you will, to deal with the concerns that international spectators have in mind. And right now, that response needs to take the form of dealing with the labor unrest we're experiencing, especially when that labor unrest is accompanied by violence.
And of course, people use that as a reference when they're talking about South Africa and deciding whether to invest in the country. But we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us, Naren Rao, CEO of SACI.